So one of the major things, aside from the fact that the police is still chasing Bang Shiok with all of this investigation, is that oddly enough, the National Museum of Korea is now working with Bang Shiok. So they forged a partnership with him. They have a memorandum of understanding. So Hybe and all of the artists under Hybe is going to start working with the National Museum of Korea to promote traditional, not just pop culture, but also traditional Korean culture. And that includes clothing, food, um, items, all of those stuff. Okay, so let's just go through that. Um, the National Museum of Korea actually has a line of products. They call it moods. So and they wanna expand that. So what they want is, or at least what's going to happen, is that artists of Hybe will now regularly come out with products or merchandise that takes from traditional aesthetics of South Korea. So from pottery to clothing to shows, food, they will come up with merchandise and products that reflect traditional Korean culture and aesthetics. Okay, so that's one. Second is that using the infrastructure of Hybe, all of these products will actually be exported to other countries. So wherever Hybe is able to distribute, they will actually distribute all the Moods product. So it's Moods X whatever, Le Seraphim, Isle It, and Hype and TXT, whatever. Um, and then they are also the artists themselves under Hybe will also promote the National Museum of Korea. So they're going to push traffic. I don't know if you've ever been to if you've ever been to South Korea. The National Museum of Korea is a one stop. That's one stop you shouldn't miss. It's so beautiful. Okay, but more on that later. The very first partnership that Hybe had with the National Museum of Korea is the Dalmajong collection. So they came out with all of this beautiful, beautiful stuff. I don't know if you were able to get some of it. I was able to order some, but all of this, the design, it's traditional South Korean aesthetics. I think if you go to Weavers, there's still probably like maybe one or two items that are still available, but most of them are sold out. So they're beautiful. It was highly successful, just like any other merchandise that BTS came out with. If you would remember, BTS was actually one of the celebrities that delivered a performance and also a speech in the YouTube presentation for graduates during the pandemic. So they shot it in the National Museum of Korea. So you'll see there you can recreate their dances if you want to do a TikTok. This place is so beautiful. So you can actually sit there, if you just want to rest for a bit before you go on to the next section. In this area that you're seeing right now, you can rest there. Beautiful, beautiful place. So people can seem to understand the connection between why would the National Museum of Korea, such an important part of their cultural drive, the South Korea's cultural drive, why will they partner with somebody so controversial? Okay, so not only that, if you would remember in the newly launched organization to promote national culture, every every one of the big four, or what I like calling giant one and big three, has a representative. So there is somebody, if you can read that, there is somebody from JYP, YG, Hybe, and SM Entertainment. So each of the giant one and the big three, there's a representative in this organization. So essentially, what the president did was call everybody to help in whatever it is that they are doing. And so again, people were puzzled if the police seems hell bent in going after Hybe, why are you calling this organization to help you with something so important? Oh, sorry, before I go there. So, what is expected is that based on what they did for BTS, the partnership of the National Museum of Korea and BTS, based on what they did also in the Busan concert, it is highly likely that Hybe is going to shoulder the production cost and then just donate the net profit to the museum. If you would remember when the Busan World Expo committee asked BTS to help them in the campaign, when they did a concert, even though it is actually pretty obvious that that concert was supposed to be a part of the campaign, Hybe still chose, or Big Hit still chose to shoulder the cost, if you would remember that. So they declined all the donations except for the use of the venue. So, as far as I understand, they only paid half of the venue price, and then the rest BTS and Big Hit shouldered. And that actually, it was a huge cost. A huge cost. I mean, putting up a concert is not easy. Also, um, allegedly, big because they were shouldering everything, but it was representing the government. They had to double everything, meaning they had to double the security, the insurance, because they had to make sure, because they're not just performing for themselves. They had to make sure that it was going to be flawless because they are going to perform for the government. Then Big Hit also shouldered, if you would remember, the venue was not finished. There were still a lot of things that had to be done. And so BTS themselves or and Big Hit actually had to shoulder the repairs and to finish the venue. So they spent it just turned into a controversy for a lot of people and they didn't gain anything. So most likely, based on that track record, it is not unlikely for Hybe to actually shoulder the production cost of all of these products, but still give the proceeds to the National Museum of Korea. And then also the area where the stadium is, where the arena is, it's not what do I call? It's not sophisticated. It's not done. So Hybe actually had to pave some roads just to get people in the venue in a comfortable way. And as I've said, they couldn't afford to not do all of those things because then it's going to be their name and the name of the government. So they had to put in a lot of money in that, which and Big Hit sort of explained it. They said that BTS members actually wanted to do it anyway because they've always wanted to do a free concert. Like that's one of the things that they've always wanted to do. So it's like this is a chance for us to do that, to fulfill that wish of BTS members. Okay. So it just feels like they keep on being used. Okay. Now, another development is that the ruling party of the government is actually moving to abolish to abolish the breach of trust as a criminal case. So if you would remember, I'm sure we've covered so much of the Min Heejin versus Hybe and New Jeans versus Adore cases. Both of those cases are hinged on breach of trust. Basically, they're able to sue each other because of the clause breach of trust, because it is categorized as a criminal case in South Korea. Now, the ruling party of South Korea is trying to take that out. They're trying to make it a civil case and not a criminal case. Okay, so let's go through that. So if that happens, it's going to affect the current cases that Hybe has against Min Hee Jin and Adore has against New Jeans. Okay. Okay. Background. So breach of trust in South Korea means that any kind of liability or negative results coming from a mem a- an employee, caused by an employee's decision or program or move, could be viewed as breach of trust. Okay, let me say that again. If a manager of the company or an executive or even an employee causes any kind of financial loss through their actions, then that would be breach of trust. Okay. So, for example, I'm a manager of a department, and let's just say, I manage the marketing department, and I decided, okay, we're going to advertise on TV as part of our marketing program. So I spend, let's, for example, say $5 million. And then that didn't yield any return. The company lost that 5 million, in other words. So what now the company can actually sue me for breach of trust because I caused them financial losses. And that for them is a violation of my fiduciary duty. Okay, so right now that's how the law is written and interpreted in South Korea. So it's very broad and very vague. That means prosecutors or lawyers can apply that to almost anything else. And many of the cases against executives and even founders and owners of big corporations in South Korea, they're actually hinged. They use this. They use the breach of trust clause as a criminal case against these people. So, for example, a CEO invests a risky project that fails, that can be breach of trust. A bank officer approves a loan that goes bad, then that's breach of trust. A corporate restructuring leads to layoffs or short-term losses, that's breach of trust. So, what the government is saying is that um, it's actually hindering people from taking risks. Many of the executives and business owners in South Korea have become risk averse because of this. Okay, so they said that because of this, many business owners, executives, vice presidents, they have become risk averse because they don't want to risk it. So they said that to revitalize the economy, they want to encourage taking risks. Okay. That's their rationale. Why they're trying to decriminalize breach of trust. So the logic is kind of like, if every failed business decision can be criminalized, managers won't innovate, invest, or take bold actions. We need to shift from punishing economic mistakes to promoting responsible risk taking. Okay. That's the logic. Don't scare them with criminal clauses and they'll take risks. Okay, so the proposed change, these are the details of the proposed changes. So they will replace criminal punishment, in other words, you won't be jailed, with civil or administrative liability. And that means fines, restitutions, firing, fees, and other stuff. Focus criminal penalties only on intentional fraud, embezzlement, or personal enrichment, not on failed business judgment. So they're saying that if it is fraud, if you made money out of a company, if you are proven to have mishandled or pocketed money of other people, then those are criminal cases. But if it is you taking a risk and you failed, that's not criminal. That's just failure. Third, give peace of mind. As they said, this is the word that they used. Give peace of mind to executives and entrepreneurs making good faith decision. The other side says this is dangerous because it's going to weaken corporate accountability, especially among conglomerates, executives who already wield huge power. So I don't know if you know this, but the Cacao, if you would remember that Cacao sued their former CEO for for making bad investments in Bana. And he was proven not guilty because they said that you can't prove that his investments was malicious. That's basically what the court said. So now critics are saying if something like that, if they can get away with something like that, then decriminalizing breach of trust is going to make it worse, especially those in the higher ups. They can find ways on how to invest on something, for example, a production company like Bana, and then funnel the money to them. However, the one thing that we do need to remember is that this reform is not going to apply to current cases. Okay, so whatever current cases is happening is just going to be ruled using the old law, using the old regulation. Under the current HYBE, the current case, the current law, sorry, the current regulation, HYBE accused Min of breach of their fiduciary duties by discussing ways to wrest control from the current company. So, if you would remember, Hybe is saying that he tried to weaken the control of Hybe over Adore by talking with people on how to destroy the reputation of Hybe, destroy the reputation of Adore, and also by looking for other investors. Okay, so that's their one. Second is that misusing confidential corporate information and strategizing to dilute Hybe's ownership, which Hybe said constitutes breach of trust under Korean law. So the confidential corporate information includes contracts, her own shareholders agreement with Hybe, and also that controversial document that review that the former editor-in-chief of Weavers magazine put together to review the different positionings of different girl groups. So Hybe is saying she used it, she put it under miscontextualized, basically. It's a wrong context. If you would remember, in the initial case, when she first won the injunction, the very first injunction, the judge said, you can't say that she damaged Adore because Adore didn't lose money. Okay. So she didn't damage Adore. So you can't say she damaged Adore. They managed to get her out as a CEO anyway. So in a in the current law, Hybe actually does not need to prove loss of income. They just need to prove disloyalty or questionable acts. So in principle, that judge should have sided with Hybe, because in the current law you don't need to prove monetary losses. For as long as the intent was wrong and it was a disloyal act, that should have been breach of trust. Anyway, that's done. If the proposed reform were already in place, then Hybe's leverage would drastically drop, because then they will have to prove, before they can make it an actual case, they will have to prove that Adore lost money because of Min Heejin. And if you would remember, the initial judge said, the first judge of the initial injunction said she didn't damage Adore. She tried to weaken the control of Hybe, and he acknowledged that. She tried to weaken the control of Hybe over Adore, but she did not damage Adore. Therefore, you cannot fire her as a CEO of Adore. Your case should be a separate thing, but it isn't related to her being a CEO of Adore. Okay, now the case, if the new proposed law is applied to the current case, then it's not going to go to the court. It's just going to be a civil court one, or it could be an internal arrangement. It could be an internal discussion, because it's going to be a civil case, instead of just saying that did she betray or did she try to betray Hybe. The question will be, how much damages did she actually cause? What did she destroy? And what is the exact monetary value of what she did? That's a much tougher case to prove, because then you really have to prove that any kind of losses you suffered is all because of her. Okay. So, for example, if they want to prove that New Jeans refusing to work is a cause of what she did, they're going to have to make it very, very clear that it was Min Heejin who egged on New Jeans to not work for Hybe. And she has wisely distanced herself from New Jeans since the New Jeans case began. So I guess to a certain degree, you can say that it does play both sides. Okay, now, one thing to be clear though, New Jeans didn't file a criminal complaint in return. They only use the term breach of trust rhetorically, sorry, and accused Hybe in a public statement of breach of trust, but they didn't sue Hybe under breach of trust. They're just using it as a talking point. If the breach of trust, and also it was Adore who actually filed the complaint against them, not the other way around. So if breach of trust law were downgraded or abolished, then Min could publicly and legally assert her claim that Hai breached Adore's trust through unfair interference without criminal punishment. Okay. um, Min's defense would shift from I didn't commit a crime to Hybe is the one violating governance norms. That's how it's going to turn the table. I hope that's clear. However, if breach of trust is downgraded from criminal to civil, the one thing is that both sides, both Min and Hybe and the door, would need to prove economic harm, not moral betrayal. So in that case, Min can talk about breach of trust and whatever for as long as she can, but if she cannot prove that Hybe or Adore caused her economic damages, then there's nothing she can do. So it cuts both ways, right? With it would force both to prove actual damages. So it's not just Hybe that will not suffer, but will have to change the strategy, but also her. Okay, so in the Hybe Adore situation, the criminalization of betrayal amplified the scandal. The criminalization would have turned it into a contractual and corporate ethics dispute, sparing New Jeans and the public from months of criminal suspicions headlines. That's the one thing that's going to go away. Everything is going to be private. Most likely, everyone will have to sign an NDA. So while they are hearing this case internally, no reporters will be involved, and it will just be arbitration. So if they don't settle, if no agreement ever is settled, then it's just going to drag on for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. At the end of that, it's actually New Jeans that will lose the most because as we know in South Korea, once you near 30 and you are a woman, then you have a weaker chance of actually making a comeback in South Korea. You're going to have to go international. If you go international, we don't care what your age is. We have Madonna, hello, right? So I think if one of the things that the supporters of Min Heejin is celebrating is the fact that it's not going to be a criminal, and New Jeans supporters, if they're celebrating this change because they think it's going to spare the girls, it actually might just put them in a worse situation because then that's the one thing that everyone will have to agree on, that there is an NDA. You shut the F up while this arbitration is happening. You cannot give interviews, you cannot hint at anything, or you automatically pay fines. Then if no one is agreeing to anything, then they can just drag this on for 7 years, right? And then by that time, Hyde can say, okay, you go restart your career. So I think they have to think twice if they are advocating for this, thinking that it's going to save New Jeans. I don't think it will. The second thing is that this will not be applied to current cases. So that case that is being heard right now is just going to go on as a criminal case. This thing is going to apply to future cases. It cannot be retroactive.